I'm here with Markus Bokelmann. Markus is the Chief Financial Officer of Aeon for the Benelux countries and has been one of our panelists at the Erasmus Future Energy Forum today. One of the things you were talking about is how the smart grid transition is going to affect both customers and the way that your own company does business with them. Comment on the new business models that you see for the smart grid transition.
Well, it's clear that the customer will have many more options than he had in the past. In the past, the customer was a consumer. In the future, it will be a producer as well, turning into a kind of prosumer, as we call it. The business relations to the customer will be more complex. The energy suppliers, Aeon, will provide all kind of value-added services, managing these opportunities for the customer. The customer itself will move into that direction, I'm certain, as soon as there is a business case for new investments and as soon as there is a transparency over the value that the customer can actually gain from these options.
We're also talking about some of the uncertainty that surrounds any transitionary period, and such is also the case with the smart grid transition. What do you as a company expect from policymakers, but also from technology providers to cope with some of that uncertainty?
Stability. What we see in the last years in many Western European countries is that policymakers and regulators interfere into the market rules, sometimes very often, sometimes very, very sudden, giving investors, putting investors into a very difficult position. Insofar, it will be important to attract investors both on the customer side as on the supplier side, on the grid side. In order to achieve this, I think the rules of the games must be clear, must be dependable and transparent.
Markus, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Standing here with Laurens Rook of Technical University Delft, and Laurens is doing research on behavioral psychology and more recently also on the psychological aspects of the smart grid transition. Now Laurens, the smart grid means many things to many people. What does it mean to you?
For me it means a lot of opportunities to actually start delving into the fascinating topic why consumers of energy would actually select different tariffs. And this is almost unexplored territory, and for me it represents a lot of fascinating opportunities to explore this in greater detail.
So maybe tell us a little bit about the concrete research projects that you're involved in at this moment.
Sure. A key thing with consumers and consumer behavior is that what people tell you they actually think is not often what they actually think, and it's definitely not what they decide to go for in the end. And this gap between attitudes and actual behavior is very dominant and of key importance for issues related to renewable energy, for instance, because this represents a transition from traditional thinking to actually new ways of dealing with energy. This is attitude change, and this is absolutely fascinating to see how people are actually coping with these different changes and all the challenges they face in reality, in their everyday life. And part of the research that we are currently undertaking actually explores how people deal with the risks and the possible gains and losses in their transition from traditional to renewable energy. And we do that in various laboratory situations just to see and try to find out under what circumstances consumers actually really not just say they are green, but actually become green.
Thank you. We had a lot of interesting other talks about the psychology of the smart grid transition, but also on aspects such as the economics and tools that can be used in research to shed light on some of these things that will happen during the transitions. What are your key takeaway messages from this morning's presentations?
Well, I think there's still a lot of ground to cover. We are just at the beginning of a large change in behavior of consumers that also will change the society as a whole. And to do that, we really need to combine the state-of-the-art of various different knowledges, backgrounds, and actually work together as much as possible to make this really happen.
Thank you, Laurens, for your time. With me here is Eric van der Heijden. Eric is the head of the Smart Grid Division for Siemens in the Netherlands and has been one of our panelists today. Eric, Siemens has a very broad portfolio of products and services, and we've heard that the smart grid is also a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Tell us a little bit about where Siemens positions itself in the smart grid transition.
Yeah, we are, as Siemens, a big company. We're a big player in the energy, but actually more broader in the field of infrastructures. So also in the field of mobility, for instance. We see now that the world's in a transition. That's what we talked about today. There's like a big transition in the way of energy, looking more at sustainable energy. And that also comes back in the mobility, where you're talking about smart mobility, consumer smart homes. So we as Siemens, we want to play an important role in that, not only with our products and the solutions, but we really want to, as a stakeholder in this field, we want to also shape this new energy transition. So that means it's very important to have also a close relationship with all our stakeholders, with the government, with universities, to step out our traditional role of supplier, but actually are more like a partner to together with the other stakeholders to shape this energy transition. Specifically there we see that in the field of energy networks, where we are already active in, there we see a lot of changes there that to make this sustainable future possible, we need to go more to a smarter, more intelligent grid. So that's also why we as Siemens have a huge focus on that.
Yeah. We saw this morning that in some of the talks that the questions that need to be answered as part of the smart grid transition are incredibly broad. So you have questions from economics, from behavioral science, you have questions that concern technology. What are some of your key takeaway messages from these morning's talks?
Actually, the important takeaway is that actually all these stakeholders play a role. Also, for instance, the university or academic world is also a very important stakeholder there. And I was this morning also quite surprised in what kind of research and developments and visions you have there. But again, also as we, as the industry, cannot do this alone, and also the government not, we need to really to learn from each other and to contact and look what our vision is and sharpen each other and learn from each other here. I think this is exactly what happened, this also in the panel discussion. And this is again confirming our view that this transition is so big that nobody can do it alone. And also we as a supplier, we have again stepped out of our traditional customer supplier role, because in the future there is not always this clear customer. It's the whole society which we have to shape together, and we want to take an active role in that. And that's exciting, and that's also what was happening here today.
Eric, thank you so much for these comments.
Okay, you're welcome.
With me here at the Erasmus Energy Forum is Andreas of the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki, Greece, who's actually been giving a speech himself this morning. And since the topic of the day is reinventing the energy landscape, Andreas, what are some of your thoughts on where the energy business is heading over the next 5 or 10 years?
So I think from my point of view that there's a big potential for energy business, because in fact up to this point we have the traditional grid, the traditional power grid, and things are changing, and they are changing rapidly. So at the beginning you had the typical traditional grid where you had the companies, the producers, and then you have the transmission system operator and the distribution system operator, and they would in fact control the whole of consumption. But now we're moving to a different era. So you have renewable sources of energy, you have people that act as brokers or as aggregators, and they stand in the middle, they start procuring energy, and they produce it to consumers. So I think that there's a big market potential either for manufacturers of renewable energy equipment, for people that will be working with control, with people who will be working with the market, and also people that will be working with demand response, because I think that demand response is going to be very, very important in the next few years. You will have the ability to get input on what you're consuming, and you will have the ability to react on that and have either economic or environmental incentives, and this would really change the whole energy landscape.
Now, your own group is working at the School of Electrical Engineering.
Yeah.
What is it that you're contributing to this change?
Okay, we have been working, in fact, my group is composed by people from the power systems and people from computer engineering. So we are trying to tackle both ends of the problem. We are trying to see it from an energy perspective and how power systems behave, the traditional power systems, and how they will transform to the next era. And from the computer engineering side, we're trying to simulate this new era. So we have been working a lot, even with markets, and we have been working with the way that this change is going to go. And mainly we're trying to model the new scenery and provide a tool that is as accurate as possible, so that we can go on and have a normal shift to this new era. So this is our approach. We're trying to help the industry identify how exactly things are going to go, and what changes you're going to have in the next few years.
So in your talk this morning, you talked about customer modeling, yeah, primarily. We also heard other speakers speak about, say, more economic aspects of the smart grid transition, or more methodological aspects of the smart grid transition. What are your key takeaway messages from this morning? Well,
it is very important to understand that the power system has both an economic side, it also has a behavioral side, and it also has a technology side. So from the talks that the other speakers gave, one can very well identify that there's a huge opportunity for the markets. So you have a new power stock market, you have a power exchange behavior that didn't exist in the previous years. And this creates a huge level of freedom in the way that people will interact with each other. And it is very interesting to know that there are people that are working on the part of economics, and how these physical needs that people have, consumers have, will be in fact translated to money, and how these things will work in the new market. Yeah.
Andreas, thank you so much for the statement.
You're welcome.